Hello, I am Dr. P.J. Mazumdar from Arogyam Hair Transplant Clinic. So today I am going to discuss on the topic of hair transplant in high grade baldness. So baldness is graded according to the Norwood scale. So we will discuss hair transplant in those with the highest baldness, grade 6 or 7. So whether hair transplant is possible, the costs involved and other things like that. So we'll discuss on this topic today. So baldness is graded on Norwood scale. We call it the Norwood scale. So there are different grades of baldness. So as you can see here, grade 6 and grade 7 are the highest grades of baldness. Here the baldness reaches up to this level or even beyond up to this level. And there is only a thin margin of hair, especially in grade 7. There is only a thin band of hair at the back and some hair at the sides. So we will discuss whether transplant is possible in these two high grades of baldness, grade 6 and grade 7. So what are the problems that we face in transplant in grade 6 and 7? So the main problem is that the donor area is too small while the required area, the bald area, is too big. So the number of grafts which are available from the donor area are inadequate to cover the bald area, the recipient area. That is the problem of transplant in high grades, in grade 6 and 7. So to some extent we can mitigate by doing transplant from the beard also. But even then it is not sufficient. So we have to face a problem whenever we encounter a patient with grade 6 and 7 baldness. Now, how many grafts are needed for the recipient area and how many grafts are available from the donor area? So, as you can see in grade 6 and 7, the recipient area is quite big, coming from here to here, and in grade 7 extending behind also. So, to cover this fully, we would need 7,000 to 8,000 grafts or even more. But the donor area again is small. There is only a band of hair at the back and some hair at the sides. So from the donor area, maximum we can extract about 2,500 to 3,000 grafts. And if the patient has a beard, then maybe another 1,000 grafts also. So we have about 4,000 grafts for transplant, whereas we need about 7,000, 8,000 grafts. And that is the main problem. So we have somehow to find out a technique, find out a way to make this smaller number of grafts available to cover the much larger area that is there. So now we come to the question of the patient's expectations. So that is where we have to counsel the patient very carefully in grade 6 and 7. It is very important that the patient has a realistic expectation. Whereas we need about 7,000, 8,000 grafts, but we have maybe 2,000, 3,000 or 4,000 grafts. So the expectation has to be realistic. We cannot cover all the area in grade 6 and 7, but it is not that we cannot do. We still can do, and how we will do, I'll explain now. So because we have lesser number of grafts than the area to be covered, what we do in grade 6 and 7 is that we put the maximum number of hairs or grafts in the front region. Our aim is to create a nice hairline for the patient. So we cannot cover everything. The areas at the back still remain bald almost completely, or we put a mild cover there. But what we can do nicely is that we can make a nice hairline. The changes, or even with just the hairline, are dramatic. So that is where the expectation of the patient is very important. We explain to the patient that we will not be able to give you a complete head of hair, but what we can give you is a very definite improvement. Your look will definitely improve vastly. Your look will completely change with the hairline and with a fine cover over the whole head. Although the cover will be of a low density, but still the look of the patient completely changes once we do the graft transplant, and that is why we are still able to do in grade 6 or 7, even though we have much less grafts. So now I am showing the results of our transplant in grade 6 and 7. So this is a grade 6 patient. So you can see that he has lost his hair up till this level. But here we were able to give quite a good cover to him because he also had a good beard and he also had some bit of hair in the middle. So although we have done only about 3000 to 3500 grafts in this patient, still as you can see we have achieved quite a good result and his look has changed. And now this patient is a grade 7. So here also you can see that we have achieved quite a good result. He looks very different from the before picture. But actually what we have done here is we have just given the hairline. We did only about 2500 grafts for him. But once we gave the hairline, his look completely changed. He looked much younger after the transplant. But here what we have done, the back areas are quite bald still. His area at the back we have not been able to cover. We have covered only the hairline. But even then, as you can see, the look changes completely. So even with 2500 grafts, we have been able to achieve a very good transformation, a very good change. And that is why we still advise transplant in grade 6 or 7 also. Although it is not perfect, the results are not perfect, but the results change the look of the person to a very great extent, and it is quite a transformative surgery. So now regarding the cost of transplant in grade 6 and 7. So ironically the cost is not too high. That is because the grafts that we do are also not very high. We would be doing only around 2500 to 3000 or at the most about 3500 grafts. So the costing will depend on the number of grafts. So cost actually is not very high. Although it looks like the person is very bald, but even then the cost in higher grades of transplant are still limited, not too high. So finally, I would like to say that even if you have grade 6 or 7 baldness and you have been told that transplant is not possible for you, we can still do the transplant. The only thing is that you have a realistic expectation. Do not expect that your whole head will be covered, but you can certainly expect that your look will be completely changed. Your look will be completely transformed. So if you want further advice, you can come to Arogyam, you can meet me. I'll be happy to consult with you and give you the best advice possible.